One blade, one armor, cutting through Rome. During its pinnacle, the Roman Empire suffered two major defeats during its expansion. The first major defeat occurred during the period of the Republican Triumvirate, Crassus's expedition to the Parthian kingdom. His meticulously organized legion of 40,000 men was repeatedly targeted by 20,000 Parthian cavalrymen. They didn't even engage in direct combat, yet over 10,000 Romans died, leading to a disastrous retreat. The other crushing defeat took place in the early imperial period, the famous Battle of Teutoburg Forest. 35,000 Roman legionaries faced Germanic tribes head-on, resulting in the complete annihilation of the Roman army. This battle halted the powerful Roman expansion, and the map of Western civilization was largely shaped by its outcome. In 6 AD, Roman Emperor Octavian appointed Varus as the governor of Germania, introducing Roman laws and tax policies to the local population. Since Rome and the Germanic tribes had generally coexisted peacefully when the tax policy was announced, demanding each tribe provide 20 cows or 5,000 pounds of grain. It immediately sparked widespread discontent among all the tribes. But throughout history, might has always made right. Even Segimar, the chieftain of the most powerful Cherushi tribe, dared not utter a word of dissent. The Roman centurion gave them 3 days' time before moving on to the next village. That same evening, Segimar organized a tribal council, inviting chieftains from all the surrounding villages and encouraging them to join him in resisting Rome. However, such an act would be akin to hitting a stone with an egg, and most chieftains were unwilling to participate. Segimar had no choice but to declare that they would continue to maintain peace with Rome. 3 days later, the Roman centurion arrived at the Cherushi tribe to collect taxes and found that the amount of grain prepared was nowhere near the required quota. Since these barbarians wouldn't cooperate, he would simply take it himself. Watching his tribe's cattle and sheep being led away, Segimar grew agitated. These were the most crucial production assets of the tribe. The centurion, seeing him daring to step forward and argue, immediately ordered the Aquilifer to ride forward and lower the eagle standard, demanding Segimar kneel and kiss it as a sign of respect for Rome. Segimar was unwilling to submit. He was already a proponent of resistance, so he looked around at the Germanic warriors, considering whether to initiate an uprising. Meanwhile, Segestes, being a proponent of peace, guessed his thoughts and immediately knelt before the eagle standard. As Segestes raised the eagle's head to kiss it, his daughter Thusnelda rushed forward, attempting to stop her father. During the argument, the Roman centurion grabbed Thusnelda by the hair, intending to take her back to the camp for proper discipline. Seeing the situation about to escalate, Segimar compromised. He knelt down and kissed the eagle's standard, and only then did the centurion relent, departing with the tax goods. However, among the many Germanic chieftains, there were always those who feared no death. The very next day, a chieftain was brought to the Roman military camp. Varus decided to give him another chance. If he would only kiss the eagle standard, the incident would be forgotten. Varus immediately ordered his adopted son Arminius to execute the chieftain. Arminius was none other than Segimar's eldest son. He and his younger brother had been sent to Rome as children in exchange for peace, and he had become Varus's adopted son. Now, Varus commanding him to behead a fellow countryman was a test of his loyalty. Arminius understood this perfectly, so without any hesitation, he took the sword offered by the centurion and struck. His unwavering Roman stance greatly pleased Varus. However, Varus was unaware that Arminius had never forgotten he was a German. He was merely waiting for an opportunity. Meanwhile, Thusnelda and Folkin from the Cherushi tribe, seeking revenge for the day's events, decided to infiltrate the Roman camp and steal the eagle standard. They called upon 2 trusted berserkers, and then the operation began. Their action plan consisted of 3 steps. Step 1. Folkin led Thusnelda to the entrance of the Roman camp, presenting her as a prostitute for Centurion Metellus. Due to Metellus's notoriously wild personal life, the soldiers allowed them through. The 2 then stealthily entered the tent where the eagle standard was kept and killed the soldiers inside. Step 1 was complete. Step 2. As for the 2 warriors, they located the septic tank outside the Roman camp, jumped in, held their breath, and submerged, using the drainage channel to sneak inside the camp. They then infiltrated a soldier's tent. Step 3. As Folkin and Thusnelda secured the eagle standard, the two berserkers, having changed into Roman uniforms, also arrived at the location, bringing a barrel of lamp oil with them. Thus, while the Roman soldiers were busy putting out the fire, the four brazenly walked out of the camp. Arminius quickly arrived at the scene. On the ground, he saw a wolf's tooth pendant, and it looked familiar. He quickly ran back to his room and retrieved his own wolf's tooth for comparison. It turned out that when they were young, he, Folkin, and Thusnelda had hunted a wild wolf together. And these wolf's teeth were their trophies. He instantly realized that his childhood companions had stolen the eagle standard. Varus, the Roman governor of Germania, was furious. The dignity of the empire was at stake. He ordered the eagle standard to be recovered at all costs. But there were hundreds, even thousands of barbarian villages here, and finding the eagle standard would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. This task naturally fell to Arminius, who was of Germanic origin, as there would be no language barrier. Early the next morning, Arminius set out on the mission with a squad of soldiers. At this time, Folkin and Thusnelda had just returned to the Cherushi tribe. When the people saw the Roman eagle standard in Folkin's hands, they immediately erupted. Even Chief Segamer raised the eagle standard high, shouting excitedly. He had suffered losses at the hands of the Romans his entire life, and now he finally got his revenge. However, one person in the crowd had a somber expression, Thusnelda's father, Segestes. Afterward, the people danced the Alemannic dance around the eagle standard, beginning a day-long celebration. Folkin and Thusnelda also drew closer, though their romantic relationship was not yet known to the outside world. As darkness fell, they suddenly heard villagers shouting. The people, taking the eagle standard with them, quickly hid within the palisaded fort. Unsure of the situation, they barred the gate and prepared for battle, only to find that there was just one approaching, Arminius. It turned out that after venturing deep into Germanic territory, Arminius had split his subordinates to act separately, while he himself came to the Cherushi tribe to retrieve the eagle standard.
Salve, Vater.
Father and son, who hadn't seen each other for years, had little to say. Arminius still harbored resentment over his father giving him away to Rome. He didn't even know his mother had passed away 6 years prior. However, he still brought his father a gift, an hourglass for keeping time, while also warning his father not to even think about defying Rome.
Ich weiß, dass ihr den Adler habt. Mein Name ist Gaius Julius Arminius. Dann erwarte ich den Adler meiner Legion.
What they didn't know, though, was that there was a traitor in the tribe, Segestes. He had rushed to the Roman camp overnight and informed Varus about the eagle standard. However, he placed all the blame for stealing the eagle standard squarely on Folkin alone. In return, he hoped Varus would help him ascend to the chieftain's position. Varus agreed and decided to personally lead troops to the Cherushi tribe. Meanwhile, back at the tribe, Berulf was planning to get revenge on Arminius, as the chieftain of the Thra tribe, who was executed yesterday, was his biological uncle. In tribal law, only the gods could pronounce a death sentence. Berulf was large and strong, and Arminius was no match for him, even getting a gash on his waist from an axe. Fortunately, his armor absorbed the impact, saving his life on the spot. Immediately after, Berulf pinned Arminius down and gave him a severe beating. Folkin, unable to bear seeing his old friend beaten to death, ambushed and knocked down Berulf, issuing a warning to everyone. The other warriors didn't directly intervene, but brought a basin of cold water and poured it over Berulf's head. Berulf instantly awoke, and his companions handed him a hammer. Upon learning that Arminius had been taken to the chieftain's home for treatment, he grabbed the hammer, intending to settle scores with Arminius. Segamer opened the door and blocked Berulf, while Folkin placed his long sword against Berulf's neck. Just then, Arminius, carrying the eagle standard, rode out, preparing to leave.
Das ist also deiner. Du musst ihn dir schon holen.
During the time he was unconscious, Varus had already led his troops to the tribe. When Folkin returned to the village, he saw 4 crosses standing in the center of the clearing, with a body nailed to each one. It wasn't until he got closer that he could clearly see that they were his parents, younger brother, and younger sister. And all of this was because he had stolen the Roman eagle standard. Just a few hours earlier, Varus, the Roman governor of Germania, had arrived at the Cherusci tribe to investigate the whereabouts of the eagle standard. He had already learned from the Germanic traitor, Segestes, that a young man named Folkin had stolen the eagle standard, and thus demanded that the Cherusci chieftain hand over Folkin.
Ein Barbar verrät seine Leute nicht.
Varus didn't press the issue. He naturally had other methods. Guided by Segestes, he went directly to Folkin's home, killing Folkin's father on the spot, while his mother, younger brother, and younger sister were captured. As darkness fell, Folkin still hadn't appeared, so Varus had the other three nailed alive to crosses. The Cherusci watched all this, but dared not resist. Varus then warned them that if they did not hand over the eagle standard and Folkin, Rome would no longer maintain peace with the Cherusci tribe. After saying this, Varus led his troops out of the village. Everyone began to condemn Segestes, cursing him as a traitor. Segestes, however, had his own explanation. He claimed that everything he did was for the tribe, and that Folkin had violated the sacred agreement of the tribal council, thereby angering the gods, and his current fate was well-deserved. In Germanic tradition, people never argued in front of the dead, so the chieftain sent everyone back. Meanwhile, Folkin had just regained consciousness from his coma. When he returned to the tribe, he saw the tragic state of his family. His girlfriend Thusnelda urged him to leave quickly, otherwise, if caught, he would surely face death. Folkin, however, was immersed in sorrow and could not extricate himself. Neither of them noticed that a group of warriors, led by Berulf, had arrived. Fortunately, they did not trouble Folkin, but instead decided to follow him in resisting Rome. They journeyed deep into Germania through the night, and by noon the next day, they reached the territory of the Thra tribe. They were immediately surrounded. Fortunately, this tribe had always been defiant towards Rome, and the bald chieftain had already heard that a brave warrior had stolen the Roman eagle standard. He was very willing to join Folkin's great cause of resisting Rome. On the other side, Arminius returned to the Roman camp with the eagle standard. Varus was very satisfied with his performance and immediately dispatched a messenger to nominate him as an imperial knight to the emperor. This was an honor every Roman soldier dreamed of, and Arminius likewise could barely contain his excitement. Immediately afterward, Varus assigned him a final task, to capture Folkin. Arminius could not refuse, so he set out with centurion Metellus. That night, Arminius and Metellus arrived at the Cherusci tribe, but encountered a man from the Thra tribe there, indicating that the bald chieftain had clearly betrayed Folkin. Meanwhile, at the Thra tribe, Folkin suddenly noticed unusual movement outside. He quickly woke all his companions, looking at the door, poised for battle, but only a sheep entered. The warriors were immediately at a loss whether to laugh or cry. Little did they know, the sheep entering the house was the bald chieftain's secret signal. By time for everyone to escape, Berulf alone held the door. Folkin desperately yelled that it wasn't necessary and to escape together, but Berulf was incredibly stubborn, sacrificing his life to buy his brothers time to escape. Early the next morning, Arminius led his squad to the Thra tribe, only to learn that Folkin had already escaped. He immediately pursued them deeper into Germania. That same evening, Roman soldiers cornered them in the forest. After a bloody struggle, all of Folkin's companions were killed. He believed he was doomed, but unexpectedly, the Roman officer Arminius suddenly lashed out, killing the Roman centurion beside him. As Folkin watched in shock, Arminius quickly dispatched the last Roman soldier. A short while later, Thusnelda also found them. The three childhood friends were finally reunited. Arminius told them that for years he had been waiting for an opportunity to strike a devastating blow against Rome, and now was a God-given chance. He instructed them to contact the chieftains of various tribes and spread rhetoric of resistance against Rome. As for himself, he would simply chop off a random Germanic head, then return to the Roman camp and tell Varus that it was Folkin's. Regarding the accompanying soldiers, he would claim that they encountered fierce resistance during the pursuit, and the other soldiers did not make it back alive. Varus did not doubt Arminius's story. Instead, he was greatly relieved. Immediately afterward, he gave Arminius a new task, to become the new chieftain of the Cherusci tribe and help Rome better conquer Germania. He had also already convinced Segemer to abdicate. However, in Germanic tradition, a new chieftain is only chosen after the previous elder's death. Concerned for his father's safety, Arminius quickly rushed to the Cherushi tribe, but it was ultimately too late. By then, Segamer had already walked into the swamp, ending his own life. The next day, the news of Segamer's death was brought back to the tribe by the priest. The happiest person at this moment was Segestes. He had coveted the chieftain's position for a long time. Arminius arrived at the tribe with his personal guards and announced that as Segamer's biological son, he was the legitimate heir to the chieftain's position. Segestes never expected such an outcome, and he simply had no qualification to compete. Thus, Arminius became the new chieftain of the Cherushi tribe and officially began his path of resistance against Rome. To strengthen his influence among the various tribes, Arminius sought out Folkin and Thusnelda. Since Thusnelda was not only the daughter of a Germanic noble, but also the hero who stole the eagle standard and even a Germanic prophetess, he hoped Thusnelda would marry him. This was undoubtedly a thunderbolt to Folkin, as he and Thusnelda were already in a romantic relationship. However, for the greater good of their people, they had to support Arminius's decision. Since Folkin was considered dead in the eyes of the Romans, he could not return to the tribe and could only wander alone. Soon, Arminius and Thusnelda held their wedding. Folkin hid in the distance, secretly watching. Arminius successfully rallied several tribal chieftains, adding 2,000 people to the resistance against Rome. However, most chieftains were still very bothered by his Roman identity, and Arminius still needed to gain their support. At night, Arminius and Thusnelda were encircled by the people, then tightly wrapped together with strips of cloth. Although Arminius had a strong reaction, he remembered the principle of a friend's wife is inviolable and kept his desires in check. Folkin, however, had a terrible day. Depressed, he drank himself into a stupor, then encountered a troop of Roman soldiers escorting slaves and was immediately captured. The next day, Arminius's personal guards found a wolf's tooth pendant in a nearby forest, clearly Folkin's. They rushed over but only saw a charred corpse. They assumed Folkin was dead. That night, Arminius convened a tribal council, inviting all the chieftains. Arminius encouraged the people to resist Rome with him, asserting that if all the tribes united, they could definitely defeat Rome's 3 legions. As far as he knew, the Roman legions would return to Vetera immediately after the summer campaign, and that would be an excellent opportunity for an attack. He would find a way to lure the Roman legions into the forest and swamps, ensuring that the legion's long snake formation would be unable to support its front and rear. Thus, Nelda also encouraged the crowd. The crowd immediately erupted, and with the exception of Segestes and Hadge, the chieftain of the Catti tribe, everyone was willing to participate in the battle. But to achieve his goal, Arminius still needed to convince Varus to change the Roman legion's marching direction. But how easy would that be? If he were exposed, he would very likely be nailed to a cross. Thus, Nelda immediately became extremely worried. Arminius traveled through the night, arriving at the Roman camp early the next morning. However, disastrously, Segestes had also arrived there. Based on his past behavior, he would very likely betray the Germans again. Arminius was in danger. 3 full Roman legions, totaling over 18,000 men, were slowly marching through the Germanic forests. Including cavalry and camp followers, their total number was approximately 35,000. In the forests on both sides of the column, approximately 15,000 Germans were sharpening their blades, ready to launch a surprise attack on the Roman legions at any moment. This was the historically famous Battle of Teutoburg Forest. Before the march, Varus received a warning from the Germanic traitor, Segestes. Seeing his plan exposed, Arminius's mind raced. After some thought, he decided to turn the tables, stating that everything Segestes said was true. Varus was stunned, unsure whom to believe for a moment. He had watched Arminius grow up, and his adopted son had always been loyal. Arminius then explained further. His plan was to use a mere 500 barbarian brothers to lure tens of thousands of Roman soldiers into the forest and kill them. Here, Arminius deliberately threw a smokescreen, claiming the Germanic forces were only 500 strong. Seeing that Varus was being deceived, Arminius continued to emphasize that everything Segestes said was true, a look of innocent sincerity on his face, his eyes filled with a wronged expression. Varus immediately made his judgment. Segestes was attempting to sow discord between him and his adopted son. Segestes wore an expression of helplessness. He had taken a huge risk to come and inform, only to be accused of stirring up trouble. He tried to win Varus's trust, but was summarily thrown out of the main tent. Soon, Varus set out with his legion of 35,000 men. Restricted by the forested terrain of Germania, their army could only march in a long, serpent-like formation. Arminius's plan was precisely to exploit the inability of this formation to support its front and rear to launch a surprise attack. As they were about to pass the Marsi tribe, Varus grew cautious. He sent Arminius to take a detour through the forest to scout the road ahead. It seemed Segestes' words had, to some extent, influenced him. Arminius, with no other choice, took his Germanic personal guard into the forest. He thus lost the element of surprise to punish Varus. From the time he was betrayed by Segestes until the march began, his nerves had been highly strung. Now finally able to breathe, he uncontrollably began to vomit. At this moment, Thusnelda was praying for divine protection. However, Hadrian approached, claiming that even if he died in battle, he would have no regrets. Thusnelda, in response, held a small knife to his throat. Hadrian, already hesitant to participate in this war, immediately led his tribal warriors away from the Germanic positions. Seeing this, other chieftains also considered backing out, and the morale of the army threatened to disintegrate. Thusnelda reminded the people that Arminius was risking his life to lure the Roman legions into the forest, and they couldn't abandon him. As a prophetess, she would use the right eye of Odin, father of the gods, to make the people believe that this battle would be victorious. As the chieftains stood in a daze, Thusnelda slowly raised her head. She gazed calmly at the chieftains, then uttered Odin's prophecy, "The ravens are eating Roman entrails." Immediately afterward, with the eye of Odin, she spoke of the future of several chieftains. Chieftain Rurik, "Your descendants will never forget your victory today." Chieftain Aldrich, "You will bathe in Roman gold." And Chieftain Gormod, "Thor, the god of thunder, will look upon you with pride." She then told the surrounding warriors that she heard a song, a hymn celebrating their courage. No warrior could refuse victory and eternal glory. A short while later, the Roman legion's serpent formation entered the depths of the forest. Arminius was not in a hurry to act. His plan, agreed upon with the chieftains, was to wait until the entire Roman legion was in the forest, then break them down piece by piece. As log after log fell into the middle of the road, segmenting the middle and rear parts of the Roman legion into countless small sections, this battle, which Rome would regard as a profound disgrace, officially began. The Roman soldiers at the rear of the column were attacked first. At the centurion's command, they all abandoned their supplies, drew their long swords, and formed a shield wall defensively. At Thusnelda's command, the Germanic warriors charged. The Roman soldiers in the middle section fared no better. The Germanic people, with every man a warrior, fought with reckless abandon. Even many women joined the battle, contributing their part. The Roman soldiers thought there could be nothing more terrifying than this, but when they turned and saw that their legionary commander, Arminius, possessed Odin's blind eye totem, they instantly felt as if they'd fallen into an icy abyss. On the other side, the traitor Segestes found Hadrian, who had not participated in the battle. He asserted that Arminius could not defeat the Roman legions and suggested that Hadrian seize the opportunity to kill Arminius. That way, they could rule all the tribes. Hadrian was immediately tempted. Meanwhile, at the front of the Roman legion, Varus remained completely unaware of the fighting. It wasn't until a centurion from the 19th Legion reported that he learned of the attack on the rear and their devastating defeat. He immediately ordered the legion to return to open ground and form a square to defend against the barbarian assault. Soon, the Germanic warriors surrounded them.
Für das, was werden soll.
A warrior raised a torch and then ignited the prepared lamp oil. Varus's newly formed square was immediately broken into many smaller segments. Arminius, leading the charge, spearheaded the attack. Seeing the unfavorable situation, Varus quickly retreated to the side to observe the battle. In the midst of the bloody battle, Thusnelda looked back and saw her younger brother, who had been brain damaged by the Romans, standing blankly in the crowd. The next second, she saw Folkin appear beside her brother, and only then did she realize Folkin was still alive. She quickly ran to protect her brother. The battle situation at this moment was not optimistic. Perhaps her brother communicated with the gods, for heavy rain began to fall. The Roman soldiers' proud armor, once soaked by the rain, immediately became a heavy burden. Most Germanic warriors, lightly armored, tipped the already delicate balance. Roman soldiers were constantly being killed, and even the legionary eagle standard was seized by Folkin. Varus realized that the tide had turned, and this great defeat was all because he had trusted Arminius too much. So he ordered his servant to remove his armor, then knelt before Arminius, piercing his own body with a long sword and dying. The battle continued even after the rain stopped. Segestes and Hadrian arrived at the battlefield at this point. Seeing the Roman legions being utterly routed, they immediately changed their minds and began killing Roman soldiers. Segestes went directly to the deceased Varus, then cut off his head with a sword. In this battle of Teutoburg Forest, the 35,000-strong Roman legion was almost completely annihilated. The legionary eagle standard, symbolizing Roman glory, also became the spoils of the barbarians. This was undoubtedly a severe blow to Rome, which had just reorganized into an empire and sought to expand outwards.